Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Pinball A Movie. In this episode, we'll be talking about the film called Judge Dredd from 1995, and then we'll talk about the pinball table from Bally, which released in 1993, 2 years before. And I did not realize that coming in because I thought that the pinball table was based on the 1995 movie. So when I was researching it, I was like, no wonder the modes on the table I'm not making any connection with because they're not in the movie. Because the movie was made 2 years in the future, right? So that is something to keep in mind as you watch this video. But let me give you some facts about Judge Dredd the movie, and then I'll go into my thoughts, and we'll go into the pinball table as usual. So Judge Dredd the movie officially released in theaters in 1995. The genre was sci-fi action film, and it's actually based on a 2000 AD comic character of the same name. Now, 2000 AD is a weekly British science fiction comic magazine that is still in publication, so you can still read their comics. I don't know about it because I'm not a comic person, so I never knew about 2000 AD. But I found it really cool that they're still in production. And I think a lot of comics, the major ones are, right? I'm not a comic guy, so I don't know what I'm even talking about, so I'll just leave it there. The director of the movie was a man named Danny Cannon, and the reason they chose him was because he was a longtime fan of the Judge Dredd comics, and he would read the comic strips themselves. So what better director than to choose someone who's a fan, right? Instead of having an outsider who is not familiar with the comic. It's always good to have a director who is familiar with the material they're working with, because sometimes you have directors that are only focusing on the script and not any of the actual source material. The cast was pretty big. You had Sylvester Stallone, Rob Schneider, Armand Assant, and Diane Lane. Now, Rob Schneider in the film I enjoyed a lot. He is a comedic relief, and he sets the tone for the movie. You see him in the first scene, and when you see Rob Schneider in a movie, you already know the direction it's going. So you know there's going to be some laughs. And I definitely had laughs when I watched this film. Now, a lot of critics will say, back when this was released, a lot of people were saying that this was one of Sylvester Stallone's worst films, and I just don't agree. I think you have to view it today, and it's actually a pretty solid film overall. It's an action comedy. But the thing is, the director, Danny Cannon, did not get along with Stallone. He wanted the movie to be more in line with the comic. He wanted it to be more brooding and dark, but Stallone kind of read the script and thought it was supposed to be more action comedy. And so that's where you have basically Stallone got the last word. And a lot of people say, well, what if Stallone was not in the movie? Would it have been as good? It was also a box office flop. It did not do good in North American markets, but it did do better internationally. And I thought about that. I said to myself, is that because Judge Dredd is a comic series based in the UK, and maybe a lot of American viewers may not be familiar? So I'm wondering if that is a reason why it wasn't received as well in the States. But I think regardless, if you just base it as a kind of a superhero action film, I think at the time, viewers of Judge Dredd from 1995, expected something serious, but they got comedy, and that's why it wasn't seen as a good movie back then. But I think it is watching it now. So it was a flop, and something else I want to mention is that movies back then, Dom mentioned this in the Shadow episode, where he talked about how movies had not only to worry about production cost, but cost of advertising. So back then, I think advertising, you'd pay for advertising on TV for commercials. Maybe you'd have an advertisement in the papers, in the magazines, or even promotional events with like restaurants and fast food chains. And now I think with the technology today, I think that's a lot different. I feel like it's probably cheaper to advertise today, but because of that and the technology, it's really harder to get your movie out there because you have so much competition. Whereas back then, the technology was not as advanced, so you would be spending a lot of dollars advertising, on Prime TV during commercials, stuff like that. So I want to keep that in mind, and I want to thank Don for bringing that up because that does factor into cost, production, and advertising, market advertising. So I already mentioned that. Legacy-wise, there is a 2012 reboot that was received better. A lot of people who watched the 2012 reboot called Dredd said it was more accurate to the actual comic and story. And I haven't seen that yet, but I put it on my watch list. It looks really good. Kind of interesting too because I want to watch the reboot of RoboCop as well. So, and RoboCop and Judge Dredd are kind of similar. You have these super cops, these super judges. There was also a video game released in 1995 based on the movie. So Super Nintendo, Game Boy, Game Gear, Genesis, several novels, and of course you have the pinball machine, which I will talk about later. So yeah, that's just the facts, and now we'll go into what I think about it and some other interesting things that I found during my research. Alright, so now let me talk about some interesting things that I learned while researching this film. One of them was that Arnold Schwarzenegger was supposed to play Judge Dredd. Many instances, many action films, many sci-fi actions seem to want to have Arnold Schwarzenegger cast as the main character, to play the main character. I think that was the case with RoboCop. And it makes sense. I mean, he did so well in Terminator in the 80s, and then Judgment Day, which I think was 91. So seeing as this movie was in 93, I can see why they wanted to choose him. But ultimately, Stallone was cast. This film was also was nominated for 4 Saturn Awards, most notably for its good visual effects. I think they were pretty good for the 90s. It also was one of those movies that you'd have to see in the theater to really enjoy it. But, watching it now in 2024, you can definitely see how cheap it is compared to what we have now, technology-wise. Another important thing that I want to note is that Danny Cannon did not get along with Stallone. Danny Cannon wanted the script to be more in line with the movie to be more in line with the comic strip, and so he wanted it to be darker and with more violence. But Stallone read it as that it was supposed to be more action comedy. So Stallone, I think, had his way, and that's why this movie a lot of people kind of blame it for the way it turned out, because it was an action comedy instead of the serious tone that the comic strip set. So, yeah, I already mentioned that was a box office flop. Also, another thing is fans did not like when Judge Dredd removed his helmet in the movie. And that's because apparently he never does that in the comic book. So when you have films, live action films that are based on comic series, I think things like that will impact diehard fans. But for people who are not even familiar with the comic, like myself, I didn't really notice that because I'm not familiar with the comic. And keep in mind, Judge Dredd was a British comic character. So I think that, when it released in the US, in North America, I'm not aware of how many people might have been familiar with Judge Dredd. But that's something to think about. And so as a result, the 2012 reboot of the movie was a lot more positive, and a lot of people say that it was more accurate to the comic and the story. So that's something that I want to watch as well. Eventually, add it to that watch list. What else do I want to say here? Okay, so those are probably the biggest facts about the movie. But I think in my notes I wrote down something that I immediately got when I watched this. My immediate first reaction was, did Judge Dredd, the 1995 film, predict the future as we see it today? Because in this film, it predicted basically a dystopian world where you have what they call in the film the cursed earth, where most of Earth is dry wasteland and everyone is populated into these mega cities. And I thought, look at today. We have overpopulation, and a lot of the population is concentrated in big cities like New York, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, and other cities around the world. And the main theme in this movie is law and justice. So you'll hear Judge Dredd saying, "I am the law," and a lot of one-liners involving law or justice. So the plot is about a street judge, Judge Dredd, who is wrongly framed for murder by his half-brother Rico. Him and Rico were genetically engineered super cops, part of the Janus Project. And these super cops were supposed to be perfect judges to basically uphold the law. And that reminded me a lot of RoboCop, because that's what RoboCop was. He was like this super cop, right? And in this comic, this movie, the super judge. And so these super judges, these street judges, are judges, cops, authority, executioners. So they're doing all these roles in one. And so underneath the underlying theme, you have a lot of themes about corruption in politics. There's also, themes about genetic engineering. And all these things are related to today. I mean, there's, corruption in politics I don't think will ever cease to exist. I think that there's always something that's going to come up, where no one can really, there's going to be we can come close, but I don't think we'll ever reach that perfect balance that we all think we can reach, right? So you had a lot of political undertones, and also another thing I want to mention, you also have this feeling of, as you watch the movie, you remind yourself, can you really trust in the system? Does the system that we have in place currently work? The system meaning the infrastructure, the government, the law, the police, does it all really work? Can we trust it? And you get that in the movie, in a lot of movies like this, where people are having riots because the system is not working. It also talked about, prison systems in the movie. They're overcrowded, they're unsustainable, and so they're basically wanting to create more laws to put more people behind bars for, petty crimes. So there's a lot of, that kind of, law and crime, basically. Let's see here. So when you watch this movie, you got to ask yourself, did Judge Dredd, this movie or the comic book, in some way predict the future as we have it today? I don't think we've gotten to the point like in the movie where you have a complete cursed Earth, where everything else is dry land. But you think about climate change and the reality that the futuristic reality that was set in this movie could very well happen in the future. It's not unthinkable. Especially maybe even the genetic engineering. I mean, now we have genetically modified food, but possibly in the future we could have genetically modified humans, superhumans. So that is something I want to mention. Part of the movie, the ABC robot in the movie reminded me of the Terminators. I even had a toy of the ABC robot from the movie. I don't know where I got it from, but I had the toy, and I don't know where it is either. What else? So also another cool thing was there was the Cure song, and it was called the Dredd song. So the band The Cure, a British band, wrote a really cool song for the movie called the Dredd song, which you can listen to on YouTube, but it plays in the credits, and I thought that was cool. Really loved. I'm a fan of some of their songs from The Cure. What's their famous songs from The Cure that I like? Cure songs. I think it was Friday I'm in Love. It was one of my favorite songs. And there's another Cure song I like, but I love the Cure songs. And it's really cool that there was a song dedicated just for this movie. So yeah, I'm looking at my notes now. Anything that I missed? I think overall the movie was not received well back in 1995. A lot of people said, a lot of critics from what I read were saying that it was bad. They said it was one of Stallone's worst films. They were saying that the story wasn't really there, that it wasn't in tune with the comic. And I can see that, but my personal opinion, I liked it. I had a laugh. I love Rob Schneider. I mean, Rob Schneider as the comedic relief in the movie is always, for me, a plus. I will always love Rob Schneider. I mean, he's like Tim Curry to me. So it's like, seeing Rob Schneider and Tim Curry in these early 90s movies is just great. And I think it is better than it was when it was released. I mean, you have to look at it kind of based on the time it was released. I mean, this movie predicted the future. It was set in a future that could possibly happen. So I think you have to look at this film again and kind of judge it from that point of view. And so yeah, I'm just trying to think anything else. Okay, so now let's talk about a little bit of the pinball machine. It was a pinball table from Bally, released in 1993, and as I said in the beginning, I did not realize that this pinball machine was not based on this movie. So that's why the scenes and modes on the pinball machine I didn't recognize, because they weren't in the movie. The movie was from 1995, which is okay. It's still a pinball in a movie feature. So about 7,000 units were sold. There was also a promotional comic that was released by Bally to advertise this machine. It was designed by John Trudeau with the direction of Pat Lawler. And there were two types of modes in this machine. The Regulation 1 credit, or a Super game, which is 2 credits. And in the Regulation 1 credit, players must solve 9 crimes. And I think, like I said in the beginning, I think this was more based on the comic strip, which I'm not familiar with. I was going into this Pinball in a Movie feature thinking this was going to be based on the movie, and I was kind of surprised at that. So thank you all for listening to me and hearing my thoughts about the movie. If you haven't seen it yet, I suggest you do. I think it's worth a watch, especially for the nostalgia's sake. I think movies made around this time feel different, look different, and I just love going back in time to watch movies from, my quote-unquote childhood. So let me know if you've seen it. Let me know your thoughts on it. Which movie do you think is better, the reboot or the one from 95? I have not seen the reboot yet. The reboot is from 2012. So until I see it, that's when I can make my judgment. And follow me, we'll be playing the pinball table next. Back everyone, so this is the pinball portion of the presentation and we're playing the super game. So the super game is 2 credits to start and you get a multi-ball to start each ball. So let's go here. Super game. I chose super game, right? Oh, look at this. Oh man. I love this. I love starting with a multi-ball. And this epic lighting here. Oh, and the sound effects. This table does so many things well. From call-outs to sound effects to gameplay. Oh, look at this. Look at this multi-ball we have. Just imagine how crazy this would be IRL. Oh, man. The lighting is just phenomenal. I mean, the red and blue flashers, like it looks like a pursuit, right? Like you feel like you're chasing the bad guy. You have a lot of vertical up kickers. You have a permanent kickback on the left. Oh man, and then you have an extra set of flippers at the top. Oh, this is just a beautiful table. And then the artwork too, where you can see Judge Dredd on his, I don't know, super bike. Looks a lot like the costume design of Judge Dredd in the movie. And you can see the female sidekick too in the middle. I want to say too that the super game is a lot better because I think you get more bang for your buck. Because I think with this multi-ball, you might be able to earn like a free game. Because your score will most likely be higher. I'm not sure if that's the case. But I like the concept of like a super game in pinball. This table has really good flow as well, and I think that's because it has so many flippers and you have more control over the ball than you normally would if you have like just one set. And it kind of, the way the table is designed is that it makes the player want to use the flippers. The way they're set up. And so you see in the center the 9 crimes you have to solve. But I can't believe this isn't based on the movie. For the longest time, I was thinking that this was based on the 1995 movie, but it's just based on the comic. I forgot if I asked this, but I'm kind of curious if any of you all watching this video are familiar with the comic. Like I said, I never heard about Judge Dredd, the character, until I heard about this machine. I vaguely remember the movie, but I think I know the pinball machine a lot more. See, look at that flow. Okay, check this out. You have, see this kicker? This automatic kickback is now manual. So that's really cool too. It has 2 functions. Oh no, I should have. See, I could have talked more about the scenes, but they're not from the movie. Whoa, what is this? This super mode is awesome. See, I don't even think that spaceship was in the movie, or whatever that is. What is that? Is that the Cursed Earth? Whoa, so it locks 3 balls in there. I see where the holes are, too. That's pretty cool, actually. It's rotating. Oh, no. Well, guys, thank you for watching me play the Bally version of Judge Dredd. I know this Pinball A Movie version was more movie than pinball, but I've done this table a few times already, so I didn't want to go too much into it. Just wanted to show you guys a super mode. So, until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.